Good evening, everybody. The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. And I'm back with another edition of Are You In? So I'm going to start the timer and we're going to get going right now. Tonight, I am looking at Dream Theater's newest album entitled Distance Over Time. Dream Theater is a progressive metal / progressive rock band from Boston, Massachusetts, most of them having studied at Berklee College of Music. Members include John Petrucci on guitars and backing vocals, John Young on bass, James Labrie on lead vocals, Jordan Rudess on keyboards and piano, and Mike Mangini on drums and percussion. Previous albums include When Dream and Day Unite in 1989, Images and Words in 1992, Awake in 1994, Falling to Infinity in 1997, Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from Memory in 1999, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence in 2002, Train of Thought in 2003, Octavarium in 2005, Systematic Chaos in 2007, Black Clouds and Silver Linings in 2009, A Dramatic Turn of Events in 2011, Dream Theater in 2013, and The Astonishing in 2016. A lot of good albums over the years. This has been one of the pinnacle bands of progressive metal over the last 2 or 3 decades. My personal favorites being Images and Words, Metropolis Part 2, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, and Octavarium. Each of them having an interesting concept, not just the music being great, but also the concept itself being engaging. Now, this is the 4th album that Mike Mangini has been on since Mike Portnoy left the band, and all of them have been alright. A Dramatic Turn of Events is definitely the best one out of the group because it has a lot of memorable songs like On the Backs of Angels or Lost Not Forgotten, and it does a lot of the heavier Dream Theater well and interesting. Dream Theater in 2013, on the other hand, not really memorable to me, and The Astonishing, even though there were some good songs and the concept is interesting enough, it's a 2.5-hour double CD, so there was a lot of filler and it was a lot to stomach. So they took a different approach on this album. Distance Over Time is about 56 minutes and 9 songs, and none of the songs being over 10 minutes long, something that is usually a staple for Dream Theater. So with that in mind, how does this change from The Astonishing? Well, the first thing to me is that each song does seem to have its own identity, whether it's the in-your-face, very fast songs like Fall Into the Light, or S to N, which is Signal to Noise, or even Pale Blue Dot. Each one of them is hard and heavy and features some great parts. Fall Into the Light has a really interesting chorus where it changes between 5/8 and 6/8 on the meter, and it also has this nice bridge part right in the middle where it drops down into an acoustic drum and pick idea where there's chords and then he's picking, and then eventually builds into the full band again with first clean guitar and then distorted guitar and some great soloing. This to me is the most thrash song on this album, definitely taking influences from 80s metal as well as the ballad parts of 80s metal as well and early 90s metal. S to N is a whirlwind of a song. It starts off with John Young playing a bass idea that's really, really cool, and it sets the tone of what the song is going to be. It is, from start to finish, really breakneck speed. It only really stops at these kind of fill parts where there's no noise, as well as the outro that is a little bit long, but to me it's a really fun song in general. The lyrics are nothing amazing. It's talking about the catastrophes in the world and how we must focus on fixing these problems, but it's not really the most in-depth lyrics other than where do we draw the line? What is the humanity? And it's very preachy at times. The other really fast-paced song on here is Pale Blue Dot, which is the last song on the album. It is about Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot speech that he gave at Cornell in 1994. It's talking about the world, the universe, and our place in the world, and the sound of this song fits the ideas of those lyrics very well. It's grand, it's open, it's really interesting and mesmerizing, but also scary at times, and is a awesome closer because of that intensity and that energy. There's some great drum work from Mangini on this particular song. You also do get some ballad type songs like Barstool Warrior, where it is kind of reminiscent of Rush at the beginning with the intro, but then brings in that more modern Dream Theater song that we're used to knowing. There's also some musical theater approaches, especially on the piano. There's a lot of beautiful parts in here, a lot of really cool color changes, and the piano part on here is really, really interesting and lovely. That gets also mimicked in the guitar parts as the full band comes back in. This song is one that is talking about two different characters. One who is basically a local drunk in a small sea shanty town that can't get away, and one that's in a kind of an abusive relationship that doesn't know how to get away from it. An interesting song, full of emotion, but kind of suffers from what I like to call a climactic lyrical ending, where it doesn't really necessarily fit the structure or the rhyme structure of the song, but it gives that final emphasis of like everything's going to be okay and like all this stuff. It's something that Dream Theater has done before, and it's very musical theater. S&N also kind of features it, and neither of them do that very well. Out of Reach is another one of these ballads that starts with just piano, and it's really, really nice. It feels a little bit more modern than some of the other stuff, yet it also harkens back to some of the older Dream Theater sounds. And then it does have a interesting guitar part that comes in. It's a nice song that is just a little bit short compared to everything else, and doesn't really get the time to be fully fleshed out, at least to me. And then one of these other ones that kind of straddles that line of ballad and a little bit of breakneck speed is At Wit's End. The beginning of it being very chaotic, but then eventually getting into this more ballad idea with Rudas doing the keyboards, and then eventually Petrucci getting this very nice and extended guitar solo. This song is about a woman and the abuse that she gets from her other in the relationship, but also the psychological burden of how to keep things together even though this abuse is happening. It's a very powerful song, and it does end a little bit weird with this fade out and then a live part, but all in all, it's a very beautiful song. And then from there we get kind of the middle ground of songs. Room 137 is very bluesy and also has these very psychedelic parts in the post-chorus. Kind of an alright song. The verses in 7/4 are very interesting, but other than that, it doesn't really do much for me. You also get Untethered Angel, which has these more classical approaches in the intro with the guitar, but also does have a more heavier sound, kind of like the sound that you hear from Black Clouds and Silver Linings. Again, not really an interesting song until the second verse comes in the 7/8 feel. And then finally, Paralyzed, the worst song on the album to me, feels a lot like a Breaking Benjamin song, particularly Diary of Jane, just like with the heaviness and also just the chord progression. It does have an interesting color change in the middle, and it is a little bit more intricate than a Breaking Benjamin song, but to me, not really memorable. All in all, not a bad CD. They're on the top of their game. The Bray sounds fantastic on a lot of these songs, especially on At Wit's End. The problem that I have is a lot of these melodies aren't really interesting until the chorus. They are on top of their craft as they always are, but not a lot of these songs are going to be very memorable in the long run to me. It's a very solid CD, and I'm glad that it's much shorter because it gives all these particular songs the room to be heard and try to be memorable. But to me, the problem is that I don't think it's going to be very memorable in the long run. I think as you listen to certain songs on the album, you're going to like a lot of it, but as a full entire album, it's not very memorable to me. Honestly, it's not that they're not doing great. It's just, I think on a 14th album, it's not really changing the landscape that they have created. They've had so many great CDs that I just don't think it's going to be memorable in the long run. I think there's some great songs on here. Fall Into the Light is great. Barstool Warriors is a standout one. At Wit's End, Pale Blue Dot. I think those four are pretty standout. And even Untethered Angel does some great stuff too. But for the most part, I think it's a solid album. And I think as a Dream Theater fan, you should listen to it. It's much more palatable than The Astonishing. But I think in the grand scheme of it, it's not going to be the most amazing Mangini album. I don't think it's even in the top half of the Dream Theater albums in general. And I think one other problem that does come up on here, I don't like that the first 3 songs on the album are also the first 3 singles. You know, you're already 1/3 of the album in, and you've already heard the songs that you already know. It should be spaced out so that you have something to look forward to as the CD goes on, because if you don't like the other 6 songs, then you are kind of screwed. So definitely give it a shot if you are a progressive metal fan, a progressive rock fan, or a Dream Theater fan in general. I think it's more palatable than the Astonishing, but again, I don't think any of this is going to be memorable come a year from now. But that's just my opinion, and that is my time. I hope you enjoyed it. I did ramble on a little bit too long, but hey, there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about with this band. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you do enjoy the album, give this video a like. Let me know what you love or hate about this album. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That would be the most important thing that you can do, so that I know that you enjoy what I'm doing and also want to see more of this. And then finally, just keep on watching these videos. So tomorrow, I'll be back with the 3rd part of the STP Digging Through Discographies, where we go over tiny music songs from the Vatican gift shop. Until then, this is The Music Fan, and I am signing off.